Welcome you all. Now we proceed to second part of this first session. After thought-provoking first part of this session, we proceed to second part of this session, that is India preferred destination of startup. I welcome you all on behalf of the VIP Road Chartered Accountant Association. Our guest speaker is Mr. Rahul Johri and CA Vineet Patawari in this second part of this session. Now I request CA Niraj Agrawal and CA Sumit Bihani to escort the guest speaker on the dais. I request to the audience to keep the mobile phone switch off or in silent mode. In this session, our speaker is Mr. Rahul Johri and CA Vineet Patawari. I am introducing first Mr. Rahul Johri. He is a seasoned BFSI leader with 31 plus years of relevant experience. Leadership stint in private sector bank, that is Bandhan Bank, and in multinational banks, Standard Chartered Bank, ANZ Greenland Bank, Barclays Bank, and DBS Bank. Track record across various facets of banking such as strategy, general management, branch banking, retail distribution, operations, and customer service. Since September 2018, he is involved in promoting a group of entities which work closely with the weaker section of society. His current assignment is he is chairman and founder of Vector Finance Private Limited. He is non-executive chairman and founder of Bargraj Finance Private Limited, independent director of We Grow Financial Services Private Limited. He is chairman and director of Tech Arc Solution Private Limited. Now I introduce second speaker of this session, who is CA Vineet Patawari. Vineet Patawari is a co-founder and CEO of Stock Edge, which is India's most highly rated stock market self-research tool for retail investors. He is also the co-founder of India's biggest dedicated financial marketing training platform with over 2.4 million users, elearnmarket.com. Being an IIM Indore alumnus and CA, he is passionate about building scalable consumer tech products, performance marketing, team building, and enhancing individual productivity. His interests also include digital marketing, blogging on recreational mathematics, traveling, and has a passion for teaching. From time to time, he conducts webinars in several IIMs, IIT on various financial market topics and on money management. Now I request CA Pawan Agrawal to come forward and present a bouquet to Mr. Rahul Johri. Now I request CA Ansul Bhuwania to come forward and present bouquet to CA Vineet Patawari. Please put your hands together and give a big round of applause. Now I request CA Niraj Agrawal to moderate the session.
Thank you, Amit. And on behalf of the association, once again, welcome Rahul and Vineet on this full-day seminar of ours on Startup to Capital Markets, Season 2. Friends, are you aware what does our Constitution starts with? The Article 1 of Constitution says, or it begins with, India, that is Bharat. And this is the name which we use ourselves for our country in different languages. India is an ancient civilization, but a modern nation state. The idea of India encapsulates the dreams and hopes of a billion people. Large group of people, young people, find that they are no longer interested in what their parents or their grandparents did. They wish to follow a different step or maybe a different arena. India is an enlightened nation today with a vibrant soft power inheritance. And so is our topic for this session, India, the preferred destination for startups. So, Rahul and Vineet, when we talk about startups, the first thing which strikes our mind is the Silicon Valley. And when we talk about India, the first city which we can think of is maybe Bangalore or Pune. You both have started your startups in Kolkata. So could you take us through your journey, like why, first of all, India? And why in India, of all the other cities, we have Kolkata, which you have chosen as the area where to start with?
Hi, good morning, everybody. Am I audible? Yeah. So let me talk to you about what my journey has been. I've been a banker for 27 years of my life. I've worked across most of the MNC banks operating in India. So I did leadership roles across DBS, Barclays, Standard Chartered, ANZ Grindlays. And in my last assignment, I used to head all the businesses at Bandhan Bank. Bandhan was an enriching and an enlightening experience for me because I got exposed to microfinance, which I think is a very unique business. It's a business with a heart. And I got the opportunity to work very closely with Chandrasekhar Ghosh, who's the founder of Bandhan. The business that I operated, microfinance, is, there's a typical model that we follow wherein we give small ticket loans only to women. These are financially excluded women, and these are given to basically to women entrepreneurs. The space that I operate in, which is microfinance, is, so Mr. Ghosh used to always tell me that there are two basic tenets if you want to create a successful microfinance business. The first is that you should look at population density, and the second is you should look at a state which is yet being developed. So I took those two basic tenets and I said the best place to operate or to start my own business was Eastern India, because it met both the criteria. Population density is high, it's much higher than the rest of India. And the second is that it's a state which is yet developing. So which is how I decided to set up my business in the eastern part of India. We today operate through 160 branches across 6 states, all in the eastern part of India. And we've also set up a couple of other companies. I also have another company. So the first company I have is Vector Finance, which gives MFI loans. It's an RBI licensed NBFC MFI. The second is Burgaj Finance, which gives loans, small ticket loans against to financially excluded borrowers for home improvement, sanitation and drinking water. Again, a very large unmet need. Nobody provides finance for these requirements in this part of the country. And then we also, Eastern India is also very rich in terms of artisan handiwork, handicrafts that artisans create. So I have another company called Artisan Soul, which is an e-commerce platform, and where we showcase the work of what these artisans in rural India are doing. So for me, in terms of the businesses that I run, East was the perfect location to start with.
Oh, great. So you got a good mix and match in terms of the product and the people who are the users of that product. What about you, Vineet? What made you choose Calcutta? And tell us more about your journey.
Hi, Niraj. Thank you so much, first of all, for inviting me to such an august gathering. Such senior chartered accountants, it's so heart-warming to see that. And I feel I can't get such an august gathering in one place other than in Calcutta. And in our last session, we were talking about CA being, somehow we're mixing CA and Marwadi culture, and that also we see in Calcutta. So why Calcutta? I'll come to that later. So when we talk about India as a startup ecosystem, right? Your question started from there. So I'll answer that part first. I believe India is at such a journey in its life cycle where there are structural changes happening in each and everything with respect to how businesses are managed, how things can scale up, the way the domestic markets are shaping up, right? So I feel if you want to start a business today, somewhere in the world, India should be in your top preferred locations, right? And a startup is a business which has to be backed by technology and has scalability inbuilt into the business model. That's what is a startup. And when you look at India, it gives you that scalability possibilities, right? Because of the huge audience it gives you in whatever you want to do, right? We are operating in financial market domain and we get such a huge opportunity. Let me give you a number from there. So all of you know that by 2018, we had around 4.5 crore demat accounts in India, which are now at 10.5 crore demat accounts. In the last 24 months to 28 months, we have almost doubled and more than doubled the demat account. That means the penetration of financial markets are increasing. So anyone who is supporting financial market will naturally grow at that pace. If he is doing something worth worth anything, he'll grow at that rate. So there is a natural push from the market to do good. That's number one. Now, specifically Calcutta. Calcutta, a lot of people ask me, especially when you do something which is, visible at a national level. So just to tell you, Stockage, which is our stock analytics platform, is anyone using Stockage in the audience? Can I have show of hands? So thank you so much. I see some 10-15 hands at least. And to others, I would request to download Stockage today, right? Because being a startup founder, you always have to be marketer first. So download Stockage. What Stockage does is gives you access to all the data information in financial markets. Calcutta, people ask me that why did you build a startup from Calcutta? Because Bangalore is the best place to do it, or probably Gurgaon and other cities. So I say, इसमें ज़्यादा दिमाग लगाने का नहीं है. I was born and brought up in Calcutta. I got my partners in Calcutta. So we are 3 partners, Vivek Bajaj, Vinay Pagaria, and me. All of us are chartered accountants. Okay? So we got what we wanted. Most important thing is the team when you want to build something. And the team should have that kind of background. And all of that we got in Calcutta. So why go anywhere else? So that's about me.
Great. So all chartered accountants having a startup based out of Kolkata, something to ponder about for all of us. My next question is, to the audience, how many of you who are in the audience now are below the age of 25 years? I see only 2 or 3 hands in the audience, people who are below 25 years. There is a worldwide assumption that all successful business founders started young, whether it is Bill Gates, Narayan Murthy, Steve Jobs, Mark Zuckerberg, all were in their 20s when they started. And today we have 2 eminent speakers, one who started young, Vineet, and we have Rahul, who has got a good banking stint, more than 30 years of experience. What do you have to say about this age aspect?
So I'm reasonably ancient. I did about 27 years of normal employment. So I used to work across different banks, and I think I give a lot of credit to wanting to turn entrepreneur to my exposure at Bandhan. I used to head all the businesses at Bandhan. I think at times, when you get exposed to somebody who you can see is fairly visionary in his thought process, then it gets you thinking. So Bandhan, I remember we did the IPO in the early part of 2018, and the IPO, the share did very well after that for a period of time, which is what got me thinking. I said, rather than doing this for somebody else, why can't I replicate the same story for myself? Why can't I build a quality organization? There's good talent and manpower available for building my business here. And the way I look at it, I think, as long as one has got the passion and the energy, and you have the right people to partner with, age is not a limitation in terms of when you can start. And the good thing is, normally in the corporate world, you start calling time on your career by the time you're 58 or 60. But if you have a larger mission and a vision for your organization, you can actually build something which will outlast you. So I'm fortunate. I started, I actually became an entrepreneur when I was around 50 years, and the last 4 years has been very good. I'm fairly open about it. I think we built a good organization, and we built 3 good organizations which are headed in the right direction now.
Vineet, your take on this.
So I agree to a lot of extent. What age is just a number, as we all say, and it's ultimately about the passion which you brings to the table. I started, there are certain advantages to start young, and I'll tell you what those are. I started directly after my MBA from IIM, and that was year 2008, and I was around 24 years of age at that point of time. And I had a job from JP Morgan, which I didn't take, and it was a year just before the market crash of 2008. So you can say that batch had the last good jobs, so to say, and after that, we are coming to the same level which we were at 2008. So JP Morgan was a very good offer. But my decision making at that point of time, I'm not sure whether it was right or wrong, but it was like at this point of time, I'm at the least risk level, right? I was a chartered accountant by then, and I learned about a concept called opportunity cost, right? So I thought, and I tell you also, knowing these terms are at times counterproductive also. Because, you start evaluating everything too much, and there is always a analysis, paralysis by analysis. I realized, though it worked good with me, I realized that I am at the lowest risk possible. Because कुछ भी नहीं हुआ तो CA है, IIM है, job तो मिल ही जाएगा बाद में. तो साल 2 साल कुछ करके देखते हैं. So that's when I started something, and it didn't work. I worked on it for a couple of years, and it was on online CAT preparation. CAT was the exam for MBA, and it went online at that point of time. That was 2008, much before this EdTech revolution. There are certain things which are ahead of its time, and because of lack of understanding of the market or whatever you see, and when you are too young, passionate about it, you bring in different kind of energy, and you oversee certain things, right? But there is no easy way to learn other than doing mistakes. Obviously, if you read, that's another way. I now feel that you can know about other people's mistake and at least avoid something which other people have already done. So yes, age gives you a possibility to make more mistakes, number one. Number two, you are not carrying burden, you are not carrying baggage of your past. And the biggest baggage I personally feel is the accumulation of knowledge over the period of time, right? When we start gathering knowledge, we start associating ourselves with a particular domain. And I'm saying this, pardon me for saying this in such a august gathering, which are all chartered accountants. It's so difficult after a practice of 10 years to get into something else, right? Though we might feel that, yes, there is something which we can start. So we need to, understand that this baggage is good in a way that it's giving us, livelihood. But at the same time, to become much bigger, we need to get out of that baggage and start something, right? Because which can grow much, much, much larger than what we are doing at this point of time. So yes, age has advantage and has disadvantage in terms of you doing certain things which are not very, very right to do. But because of lack of maturity, lack of understanding, lack of exposure, you make such mistakes which the slightly older folks will not do. Now I am 38, so I am as old, So what's happening is 24, 25, 26, that Gen Z generation, and then the millennials. I am fortunate that I am millennial, and within my partners, I am the younger one, right? So I always get this advantage that I'm still a millennial and I can think like millennials. So yeah, it has advantages and disadvantages both, yeah.
So just a follow-up question on this, like Rahul, I know him from last few years. So we always listen to people who are salaried that, we are used to a cash flow, they have certain commitments with respect to their EMIs or their lifestyle. And they always want to do this, but they are not able to because, there are so many baggages, as sir said. Vineet said. And I'll just tweak the question a little for Vineet, that he said that he started in edutech, right? So how do you deal with failures? As in, we are CAs, so we have dealt with failures in our exams also a number of times. But again, dealing failures with exam and with respect to life are different. So if you can please tell something about that.
So one was about failure and the other one is?
For you, it was for failure, and for Rahul, it was like, how do you leave that baggage of cash flows that, I'm occupied with so many commitments of life, family, finances?
Yeah. So in terms of, I'll also touch upon the first part. Because I help a lot of people in managing their finances, I would say that, starting a startup at an age of 40 is also a financial goal, right? So if you are doing good in your current profession and you are saving money to at least become financially independent by 40, 45, correct, right? And then you can have a corpus to start you only need seed money to put in, and then you should have a clear plan of how you will raise capital. Then probably that's a way to go forward. But anyways, we'll wait for his answer. And on the other part, that how to tackle failure, right? Simple answer is बिना मरे स्वर्ग नहीं मिलता. तो जब when you will have failures, then only you will learn to tackle failures. And failures or struggles are extremely important to build a stable, personality of your own. Otherwise, what will happen is a big failure and you will be wiped off from whatever you are doing. So you need failures, you need struggles in your life to create that kind of character in yourself. Yeah.
So as a founder, you have very quickly pitched the aim of, financial goal, and so you can once again refer to him for that.
So I totally agree with what Vineet said. I think, if you're venturing out on your own, so in venturing out on your own has to be a financial goal and you need to plan towards it. A couple of things that I think really worked for me, when you take this plunge, you're actually burning all bridges in terms of coming back to the corporate world. So you have to be very sure that you will succeed in what you're doing. So in addition to having, setting aside a corpus that will keep you going for 2 or 3 years at least, you should venture out with a team or with 2 or 3 people who you're absolutely sure that you will make it happen and who built a track record in the past of having made it happen. So the team is a critical element. That botheration about how will I service my EMIs, how will I, I've got different financial goals, daughters, education, or sons, career. So you've got to set aside enough that, these are taken care of. And the capital that you start with when you start, should at least be adequate for 3 years. There should be enough of a cushion that, if things don't work out, you should give yourself at least 3 years, because no business actually succeeds. It's not a success from day one. What works very well on Excel, when you start doing it in real life, it turns out very differently. So it happened with us also. When I started Vector Finance, and we built distribution. My whole game was around building distribution. So I quickly set up 150 branches. And that's when COVID hit us. So suddenly we were faced with a situation where, I had a running cost. I had 800 employees on my payroll. I had 150 branches. The capex was hitting me, capex and opex. But revenues had dried up. But because I had a 3-year buffer with me in hand, I was able to weather that storm, and we've come out of it okay. We learned from that. It was a bad experience. But we had confidence in ourselves, and we've been able to come back after that.
Thank you.
Great, Rahul. So you talked about the passion, you talked about 150 branches, which is the people, and then you talked about the 3-year cushion, the money part. So when we talk about the startups, we normally talk about the 3 Ps, which is the people, the passion, and the power of money. So Rahul, how do you rank these 3 Ps in terms of priority or importance, and how much these 3 Ps have played a role in your startup?
For me, at least, if you need to build a business, there has to be a passion to make a meaningful difference. That's when you create a business which will last. And if you have that passion, the others are basics, are hygiene requirements. You'll operate in a space where there is potential, you'll get in the right kind of people to work with you. But that passion is what will help you surmount the challenges that you will face in the journey along the way.
Right. So another aspect of which Vineet also talked about is about the risk-taking ability which you took despite being from IIM Indore. You had the best of the companies coming for recruitments. Vineet, my question to you, when you go to sleep, and did this dream ever come to you that you are with your peers who were with you in IIM Indore? and who must be in top positions in the companies, and you had an alumni meet. And in this dream, they are asking you, I'm reminded of the famous dialogue from the movie Diwar, wherein Amitabh Bachchan and Shashi Kapoor is there, and he says, मेरे पास property है, bank balance है, गाड़ी है, बंगला है, तुम्हारे पास क्या है? So what is your thought on this risk-taking ability, and whether you took the right decision and how to go about it?
That's a very interesting question and very touchy one too. Let me give you an honest answer on that. So the question was, did you ever, right? So the answer is almost every day, right? Till I was at least 5-6 years into my venture. So I started working with my partners in the year 2011. Till 2016, right, we created a couple of businesses, and those were also kind of scaling up at the pace at which the financial markets were probably scaling up, which was not very great in terms of India. But came 2016 with the demonetization and all of that, internet penetration, and then COVID, which became a big catalyst, and the revenues and funding and everything started flowing in. But the journey has never become easier. It only becomes difficult and difficult. So I'm not trying to paint a very gloomy picture of a startup, but as a startup founder, you will have a lot of struggles to go through, number one. And it's a lonely journey to a large extent, because so entrepreneurship is becoming a trend now, with a lot of IITians and fresh IITians and IIM grads and chartered accountants all getting into entrepreneurship right away after their completing their education. But at my point of time, I had 180 batchmates, out of which only I was the one who didn't take up a job, right? And that was the scenario for, again, next 6-7 years. And when you see that the people who were at par with you in terms of rankings, knowledge, etc., are earning much higher than you, and your cash flow is almost unstable on a yearly basis. So yes, that comes up, number one. And the family, the people around, etc., also keep adding to that fire, right? Because they'll keep asking you that kar kya rahe ho? Ek to when you do something which is technology backed, it's very difficult to explain people. Okay, so let's say you being chartered accountants, a lot of people today heard a term called RegTech, regulatory tech. Or let's say you are working on clean tech, green tech. There are a lot of things which are coming up. It's so difficult to explain people, right? And I remember I got married after my CA and MBA and all of that, So point was, the question was, why didn't you take up a job? What are you doing? Why are you wasting your time, right? You could have done this later also. Why waste? No, it's so difficult. You can convince your dad, but you cannot convince your would-be dad-in-law, right? So this is what happens. You have to live with it. Now the scenario is very different. Now the capital is there, adequately available. So, I think it will be slightly easier. I'm not saying very easy, but yes, that's how the journey is.
So dad-in-law must be very happy now.
I have to ask him.
Rahul, we had the previous session wherein our learned speaker talked about the venture capitalists, the fund of funds. So ultimately, the entire startup story boils down to valuations. We heard about Elon Musk paying $44 billion for Twitter. And again, we had a lot of unicorns also in India, which are starting to make losses. This was also mentioned in the previous session, like Byju's, 4,588 crores of losses. Oyo, 3,944 crore of losses. Udaan, 2,482 crores. Flipkart, 2,446. Paytm, 1,710 crores. Unacademy, 1,537 crores. Freshworks, 1,499 crores. So what is this, a mad valuation game, and are we witnessing a rising number of dead unicorns?
I always believe that it's, if you get into the valuation game, it can be dangerous for building a business. You should build a quality business. If you've got good people, you're operating in a space where there is potential, then money will come into you, capital will come. Like the entity that we built, it's, I'm very traditional in my thought process. One of the disadvantages of being ancient is that I still think in terms of, I look at my P&L, I look at my balance sheet, I try to evaluate my business more on the traditional metrics, not on the newer metrics which are looked at to evaluate the success of a business. So having said that, I would say that I think I would always look at building a quality business first. I think capital will flow into you if you are building a good business. There is a new age thought process around how do you evaluate the new age businesses, and a lot of them not all of them make sense, but a lot of them make sense, and there's some crazy valuations that get looked at. Risk is larger, but the rewards can be humongously larger than what you would see in traditional businesses.
Great. Rahul and Vineet, people, again, important aspect of your startup, but we are seeing a lot of layoffs happening now. So more than 55,000 people have been laid off in US and Europe together, Meta, Twitter, Amazon, Microsoft, HP, big. So these are some of the big names which are laying off people. In India, again, we have Byju's and all these companies laying off around 18,000 people. So where is this startup industry heading to? And whether it is good for the industry or bad for the industry?
So, the question which you asked earlier and this question, I think they are interrelated. So let me give my take on that. So, we are all finance professionals over here. We all understand balance sheets. We all understand profit and loss, cash flows, and so on, right? What has happened is we are just blaming startups for this kind of exorbitant valuations which are not backed by profits, okay? But I think that's a lopsided view which we are having, being financial professionals. Let's step back and see what's happening. Let's look at one of the biggest startup in the world, I would say metaphorically, which is India, right? We are a deficit country. We have fiscal deficits. And why do we tolerate fiscal deficit? Because we are a growing country, right? So when there is enormous amount of growth, you will fall short of making surplus. And why will you do that? Because you need to acquire users, the CAC, the cost of acquiring a customer, you were saying, and you need to do it very, very, very fast. You are comparing startups with traditional businesses which were built over 30, 40, 50 years, right? And now generating consistent profits. And we are talking about businesses which were built in last 5, 6, 7, 8 years and now have similar amount of visibility, similar amount of access, reach as the traditional folks, right? So let's look at the power of these startups, so to say. So when we say Zomato, right? All the food industry put together in terms of the listed assets we have, all the hotel industry put together, the valuation of Zomato was more than all of that, right? And the reason for that is, can you tell me 5-10 names which are listed, which are there in your mind with respect to hotel industry, etc. They'll have very limited access, local presence, very, very infrastructure heavy, and very difficult to grow further from here. As finance professionals, when I was saying step back, you need to understand what the future holds for these companies. Out of any kind of, when there is huge capital chasing any asset class, that asset class becomes inflated. That asset class becomes expensive. And it's not a phenomena of startups. It's not for private companies only. It's about listed companies as well. We have seen the valuations grow up. And right now, with a lot of companies, right, highly leveraged, but at very, very high valuations. And we are all gung-ho of those companies. And probably all of us will have some stocks which are at PE of 100, right? Highly leveraged companies, and anything might happen. And we are okay with that. But we are not okay with startups which might go into profit making. I'm not saying all of the names which you said will make profits. No, right? What is required is visibility of profit and visibility of cash flow in the business models. Now when unnecessary money starts chasing assets, lot of fake assets also keeps building up in the economy. And that's what happened with startup ecosystem also, right? So that was on the valuation part of the first one. If you want to invest in startups, what you need to see is they might not be making profit today, but are they unit economics wise positive? There are companies which are not unit economic wise positive. Whatever scale you do, अगर 10 रुपए की चीज को बेच के 9 रुपए आ रहे हैं आपके पास, तो आप करोड़ यूनिट भी बेचोगे तो लॉस बढ़ेगा ही, कम नहीं होगा. That's the simple funda. But where unit economics is positive and when things can change. For example, Lenskart, right? I'm just giving you random examples. Lenskart, right? Unit economics wise very, very positive. So the day when they will go positive, right? They will make big money because they are bigger than all the eyeglasses, players in the country put together, right? So that's on the valuation side. And when this thing happens, and when I have huge money in my bank account as a startup, I'll go left, right, center in hiring, right? And that's what happened with Byju's of the world and all of them. They went into crazy chase of hiring people at whatever salary they wanted, right? That's how another bubble got built, which was tech salaries of tech people. Crazy tech salaries. In today's newspaper, I read that IITians got 3 crore salary from some tech companies. So that's what happened with Amazon, with Google, with Twitter. Whole world was paying crazy salaries to these people. Now the correction will start happening, like it happens in any asset class. And now next 1 or 2 years, you will see correction in all of this. Okay. So that's a natural cycle.
So Rahul, same question to you, and about this unit economics with a reference to your microfinance business also.
So, microfinance is you actually operate in a space wherein the commercials work out very well for an individual loan ticket. The only catch here is that, these are typically unsecured loans which you're giving out, small ticket unsecured loans to women borrowers, and the perception is that these individuals are not good at managing their money. So the organized system, which is banks and financial institutions, tend to perceive it as very high risk, which is why we get access to funds at an extremely high cost. Typically the blended cost at which we get funds is about 13 to 14%. It's also a traditional business model wherein your OPEX is very high because there's a physical collection of the money, the installments that you've given out when you need to recover them. And it's a brick and mortar kind of distribution model. So, but typically a small-time entrepreneur who takes a microfinance loan, to give you the profile of people who take these loans, it could be, let's say somebody, who's running a small flower shop, or somebody who's running a small tea shop, or a vegetable vendor. The returns in these businesses are phenomenal. A person running a good vegetable shop can actually make about 300 to 400% on the money that the person is investing in a year. So even though we give out money at about anywhere between 21 to 24%, because our overall aggregated cost of funds is about 18 or 19%. And then you've also got to factor in your provisioning and your write-offs. The per unit dynamics in this business are extremely attractive. And what happens is it's a business of scale. So once you've been able to absorb all the cost of setting up the infrastructure, setting up your branches, putting in people, the flip side of this is phenomenal, the pace at which you can make money. And a perfect example is what I saw at Bandhan Bank. Bandhan's blended cost of access, its cost of funds is about 4.5%. Because Bandhan also has access to current and savings accounts, which is about 40% of the overall liability book. And they typically lend in the microfinance space at about 17%. And then again, the microfinance loans again get categorized as PSL, priority sector loans. So in terms of selling that portfolio, you can make another 4-5%. So the per unit dynamics of this business are extremely attractive once you've reached that gestation, you've crossed the gestation point. After which it's a money spinner. You can, and at some stage I think there is a social responsibility of all of us operating in this space to try and lower the cost at which we lend money. So let's say today if it's 21, 22, 23%, once the entity is profitable, can you bring that rate down to 18 or 19%? But in terms of building the business, I think microfinance is a good space to be in because the opportunity and the potential is humongous. I mean, today all the providers put together cater to about 40% of the requirement. So, our calculation is that about 21 crore households across the country require funding support. And out of that, all the providers only cater to about 10 crore households. So there's a very large opportunity in this business.
Rahul, a metaphor to that, we have got this association of ours, IP Road CA Association, and our founder member, Agrawal ji, is also here today. They started this association 25 years back with 7 people, and today we have more than 950 plus members in this association. And if I look at the way startups function and the way which this association functioned, wherein they had the passion, they got the right people, and with the development, with the growth, we also had the money to organize such programs. Subhoji, welcome to this program, and your take on this about people, passion, power, and few words on this, please.
The deliberations are going well. I mean, for anything, it just reminds me Three Idiot. The moment you talk about passion, Three Idiot is the best example, I'm sure. All of us sitting here have seen that. So unless until you have passion, you can't progress anywhere. I mean, with passion, you get everything. Hard labor, perseverance, scalability, everything comes from there only. And I fully concur with both the speakers. But one thing always boggle my mind, what is startup? Which venture we should tag as a startup and which not as tag as a startup? Are we fooling ourselves, those young minds sitting here, that everyone think that, and their parents, particularly their parents, as Vineet rightly said, though his parents were very kind to accept that he may venture into something, but his in-laws were not readily agreeable. I mean, that happens with everybody, probably. Happens with everybody. What is a startup? Whether Bandhan Bank is a startup? If I talk about microfinancing, fine. I may say that it's a new idea. If any idea is coming, I was just searching the Google, what do you mean by startup? So I was just finding that company in the first phase of operation with new, unique idea. If I set up a factory, whether that is a startup, I mean, can it be called a startup if I start a third making factory? Fine, if there is a uniqueness where I bring in that I will sell the product through e-marketing, through whatever mode of thing, that may be startup. So the ingredients that required for a startup or for even the practice which you are doing, Niraj, or for all of us or many of us, or for service also, the same kind of attributes and ingredients are required to be successful. I know Chansekar. Chansekar Ghosh is a good friend of mine, and I have seen how hard he had been working. And in 2004, he used to come and sit with me also in my office, that time in Marshall House. And from there, how he has scaled up. I mean, Johri has been part of the entire business. So, yes, passion is required. For anything and everything, passion is required. That's my answer. But I would definitely like the answer because I'm still not clear what is a startup. And probably every person sitting here, they would like a hairline difference. What is the startup, number one? And number two, we need to clarify to them that startup means where the chances of failure are 99%, success is 1%. We only talk about unicorn, that we give the data that in 9 days, in India in 9 days, we created one unicorn. So fine, that 1% or maybe less than 1%, anybody sitting here can become. But then that need a planning. That also, if you can clarify for the benefit of everybody.
Okay, so I agree 100% that passion is important ingredient. So there are 3 P's which you mentioned. I feel in terms of sequencing, if you do, passion, people, all of that are equally important. People are equally important. But I feel once you want to scale up something to a greater height, what is more important is a clear purpose, right? Another P. Because what happens is the passion gets dwindling after a point of time if you don't have a clear purpose with which you are doing this. And money cannot be that purpose. Money cannot be that purpose. So to answer your question, sir, whatever little I understand, to understand what's a startup, you need to understand what's the opposite or what's the other version of that kind of business. So startup and scaled up, okay? When you start something which can be scaled up very, very fast, right? Compared to a traditional business which grows at a linear pace. If anything grows at a linear pace, it's a business, as we call it, right? But a business which grows at an exponential pace and which can be scaled up. So a startup which can be scaled up is a startup. Basically a business which can be scaled up very, very fast. And more often than not, technology is an integral part of the scaling up process. Because when you want to scale up very, very fast, you need to use technology, without which it's in today's world, without using the leverage of technology. See, when you want to grow fast, you need leverage, right? We all understand leverage. So to grow fast, you need leverage. Leverage of capital, right? That's why a lot of money is required in case of startups. Because you need to grow fast, and to that you need to give leverage, number 1. Number 2, you need leverage of people, labor, right? The right kind of team. That's why hiring the right kind of co-founders, team, etc. is extremely important. The third kind of leverage which you need to grow very, very fast is code these days, right? Because code, or by code I mean technology, whatever technology you are using, that's the third. And the fourth one is actually the power of media, right? Because with the power of media, one of the latest unicorns is Physics Wala. And how it became a unicorn? It had an immense power of media. What media? Social media, right? So in earlier age, it was media, means TV channels and all the broadcast media. In today's world, social media is even more powerful, right? So you have power of that, then you can grow very, very fast. So these 4 leverages are required to grow your business at an exponential pace. Then it's a startup. And if you understand these leverages, then you can do it. Since it's extremely complicated to understand all the 4 leverages by one individual, that's why the failure rate in case of startup is very, very high. Yeah, that's all from my side.
Rahul, your take on this, please.
I think, Shubhodji, you raised a very relevant question, and it actually got me thinking, because we use the word startup for anybody who's starting a business. And I think a startup is, the way I look at it, it can also be a business that you're setting up in an established space. So let's say microfinance is almost commoditized in terms of the way in which we distribute products. But how do you bring in that uniqueness by leveraging other levers? Can you build a unique distribution system within that? How do you leverage technology a lot more? Like let's say in our business, loan disbursement, can it be done cashlessly? How can money be collected in the field without cash actually moving? So those kind of innovations can be brought in. But yeah, I think it's an interesting point that you make. My take is, I think it's, even in a commoditized space, as long as you're leveraging technology and doing something unique, you can categorize it as a startup.
Great, thank you, Rahul, for this. For the audience and for myself also, I'd like to understand that, as the growing startup ecosystem, so what roles as professionals we can play? And second, if somebody as a professional just wants to start his business, so how to come out of the baggage which you have previously mentioned, right? So these are 2 quick questions. And one more thing before we conclude the question, is that, there are a lot of tech people, deep tech, Power BI, data analytics. So where do you rank us and what you would like us to grow with?
Especially given the background which you have, one a chartered accountant and another a banker for years.
So I think this is my favorite question, being a chartered accountant, and I keep discussing this with a lot of CA friends also. What I feel is chartered accountants are best placed to make a lot of money out of these startups who are well funded, right? What is happening is, if your clientele is traditional businesses, right, they are very tight with their purses. They don't want to, shell out a lot of money for fees and for all these things. What happens is, with these startups, since they are flushed with money, right, if you are at the right place at the right time, you can make a lot of money by helping them in more than one ways. Some of the ways which I feel the CA fraternity can help startups is, with every round of funding, you need to have due diligence, right? You need to have valuations, right? You need to have a lot of regulations which comes up. The moment I grow and I have professional investors on my cap table, what they want is, I am good with all the regulatory compliances which I need to do. And I don't know ABCB, because when I grow up, I don't take care of these things. And when I'm suddenly flushed with money and my investors are saying, कुछ भी हो, एक भी GST filing miss नहीं होना चाहिए, या the date should not cross, every red mark, that's a big negative if I do anything like that. For example, we were talking about Byju's, right? There were some chartered accountants who were doing accounting, right? So this revenue recognition, or this, how do you recognize revenues in your, how was that overlooked? It came up in auditor's report later and all of that, but for very small startups also, right, you need guidance from professionals on how to deal with all of this. I come from a fintech space where the regulatory requirement is immense, and then there are startups which are getting built to help these fintechs to be, right on the right side of the regulation. Let me give you an example. Let's say if I want to build a robo-advisory platform, right? Robo-advisory platform. So I need to be a registered investment advisor under SEBI. There are compliances with respect to that. Number one, I need to do KYC for every client. And if I want to do it technologically, let's say I am adding 1 lakh users every month. And at that scale, if I need to do KYC, right, I need technology. So who provides me that technology? People who understand the regulatory framework very, very well and have got tech teams which are getting this regulatory framework converted into a product which I can use, which is software as a service, SaaS, right? So what I'm saying is, look at different industries. Fintech is the most important industry because this will grow exponentially from here on also. What I last knew was there are around 26 unicorns in fintech alone in India, out of 107 fintech unicorns which we have. So a large number of unicorns are there, and more will build up in terms of neobanks, in terms of wealth tech firms, in terms of investment tech firm, and so on and so forth. Because this space is yet to grow. The space which has grown exponentially is the payment tech space and the lending tech space, from where Sir also comes in. So these have grown up and will grow further from here. So chartered accountants have a huge role to play in fintech and regtech mix. That's number one. Number two, in terms of the baggage, which you said, that how to shell the baggage out. I think one good way is we all should look at what we can do simultaneously apart from what we are doing. And it should be interlinked. I'll talk about one of my CA friend and mentor, so to say, right? He is building a personal accounting platform, right? So that individuals these days, earlier you used to file balance sheet and profit and loss along with your returns. Now no one is doing that. And at personal level, I might not know what's my net worth, what kind of assets and liabilities I might have. Let's say you give me an option that while filing the return, my personal net worth or personal balance sheet will get created automatically, or at family level my accounting will be done automatically. I build a product like that. There will be lots and lots of takers because India is growing in terms of per capita income and the wealth which Indians are having. So such products will be the need of the future. you also look at what you are doing and can you build a product simultaneously alongside. So yeah, that's a good space, because क्या है, पूरा बंद करके चालू करना कभी नहीं करना चाहिए. That's not what we are supposed to do. We should simultaneously build something. Yeah, that's that. If I've answered the question.
Rahul,
very,
your
very
take.
nicely answered. Thank you.
So, the chartered accountant who's been with me has been with me for a time longer than my wife has been with me. His name is Agrawal. We're close friends, and he's been my chartered accountant for the last 31 years now. And over a period of time, we've got to know each other very well. Because of what he's been exposed to, and I look at this is a very erudite gathering where people sitting here have good experience, good exposure. When I started out, which was 4 years back, because he had been exposed to so much around companies starting, companies raising capital, regulatory submissions, I immediately started with an advantage, because he actually treated my business like his own business. He was very particular that we would do everything in a regulatorily compliant manner. So right from in terms of incorporation of the company, appointment of auditors, statutory auditors, capital raising, the whole process, different instruments to use for capital raising. And I think there's a lot of strength in chartered accountancy firms today working in alliance or partnership also. So for me, he's been a complete solution provider. So let's say at the back end, if I needed payroll management support, he ensured it was there. Or let's say if there was, let's say I had a trade license requirement across my branches, he would find the people to do it for me. So I think today's day and age is, for a chartered accountant, it's to think what is good for the overall entity that he's supporting. It's also an age where you can grow through alliances and partnerships. That's the way forward.
Thank you so much, Rahul. Anybody in the audience would like to ask? Sir, please.
Yeah, good afternoon. One of the important thing for starting any business is assessing the risk. Now, my question might be different from startup, but I want to ask Mr. Rahul that when Bandhan started financing to women entrepreneurs, going by the idea that they have a very poor financial literacy, number one. Number two, recovery will be very difficult from them if there is a default. So how they had taken care of about this fact?
Sure. So the model that Bandhan follows is called the joint liability group model, wherein you're lending to individual women, but these women are part of a larger group. The model was actually developed by Mohammad Yunus. He's a Bangladeshi gentleman who's a Nobel laureate, and he's the one who started this business. He tested it out. So the model that Bandhan actually worked with, they actually fine-tuned that model. So they understood what works. So initially when microfinance was started, different things were attempted by Mr. Yunus. So he tried giving individual loans. Then he tried forming groups of people, 3 to 5 people, where he said, why don't we give money to the men folk? And then the learning was that financially excluded individuals, if you give the men folk money, then it tends to get spent on other items, on certain vices, alcohol. It doesn't get utilized for business purposes. The model that finally came to Bandhan was in some ways a 60% perfected model. The remaining credit for Bandhan to build that model has, I think Mr. Ghosh is the one who's really worked on it. He's kind of developed that model wherein he understood that, let's say in a branch, if you've got a field officer, how many borrowers can one field officer manage? He also built in lots of nuances which were learnings. So let's say Bandhan had this unique thing that a branch, a doorstep, what is called a doorstep service center, is office cum residence. So the people who work in Bandhan in microfinance also stay over there. Another thing that he would always maintain is that he said, I've built a world-class business because I work with, and this used to sound harsh at one point of time, that I work with below average people. So I used to find it to be very odd. How can you say that thing openly? He said, for my field force, I only hire people who are above 23 years of age. The logic was that he said this work of a field officer in microfinance is it's very methodical. Same thing you have to do day in and day out. There is no innovation required. It's repetitive. So he said, I like people who have tried their hand at 2-3 different things, failed at it. So when they come to me when they're 24, 25, they actually value the work that they're doing. So they're willing to do this role with sincerity day in, day out. Microfinance actually is, believe me, it's not so much about, the risks are limited because the model it's evolved and it's reached a level wherein the model runs well. It's actually a case that can you standardize what you do in one branch? Can you standardize this across your network? So let's say in my case, 160 branches, can I have the same registers being maintained at each location? Can the way in which that register is filled, can that be standardized? In Bandhan, the challenge is bigger. Bandhan gives out 1 lakh microfinance loans in a day. To ensure that the same process is followed, across those loans is again, it's something which you need to manage.
Yeah, hi. Hello. Yeah, hi. This question is for Vineet, just on stockage specific. So, as we have involved in raising up capital from 2 of the players, KSL and India Mart. So, what was the reason behind raising the capital? Is it was only for scaling up for analytics and the tech which you are involved in, or it was going into the valuation game to understand the value of the company? This was the first question. I'm just continuing the second question that are we planning to take up robo-advisory services, like taking over them as an investor? And when is the next round of investing going to happen for Stockage? Thank you.
Okay, so in terms of why we raised funds when we did from Kotak and so so what's happening is we took some time to build the product, right? And we created an ecosystem for financial markets, value-added services, right? So apart from transaction facilities, which is now given by brokers, which are discount brokers, they don't provide any value-added services, which the traditional brokers used to do, like research, like access to the data to analyze markets. So that's the field we are playing in, the value-added services in financial market. That includes learning also. So we created a learning platform, eLearn Markets. We created a stock analytics platform, Stockage. Then we created a stock, what we call as social investing platform called Stockage Social, wherein people can interact about their investments and discuss and take expert opinions and so on. And then we finally integrated transaction facilities that you can buy and sell from your from Stockage itself directly. So to do all of these, it's product development, which takes a lot of effort and money also. So that's the reason we raised funds, number one. Number two, we when we raised funds, we were at around 2.5 million users. We are now almost in 1.5 years, we are at 5 million users, right? To scale up the reach of the product. So that was another reason we raised funds. Creating valuation and getting into the valuation game, that was, we don't know how to play that game, to be very, very frank, right? Because that game is a very different game. People who do it just for the sake of playing that game, it's something which is non-value generation in terms of what you want to do, and people can see that. Probably you can fool some people once or twice, but not for always. So that's on that. And in terms of when are we doing our next round? So right now, just we got into our fundraising mode, right? So probably 3 to 6 months we'll take to have some. Fingers crossed. So let's see what happens. Yeah.
As a chartered accountant, I am not a very tech-savvy person. So whenever it comes to startup, my question is how important is to learn this coding, how important is to do this CISA courses, because for any startup, technology is very important. To how a chartered accountant can cope up this gap between technology and not coming from a technology background. So how it can help us. And also one more thing, how much investment this technology part takes for a startup. Is it the major chunk, like 60% of the investment is in this technology and rest other, or what is the percentage in that?
So it really depends on the kind of business that one is getting into. So let's say I have invested in a company called Autobix. Autobix is an e-commerce platform for used cars. Their technology is almost 60%, technology or technology-related costs is 60% of what they're doing. Then I've invested in another company called YLG Salons, which is a salon chain in Bangalore. There the cost of technology is only 10%. So it really varies across the space that the entity is operating in. Microfinance. Technology spends are typically not more than 5 or 10%. So it varies from industry to industry. But on your other question around, I think all of us have to embrace technology, because that is the way for the future and the world, in any business or in anything that we do. I've studied in IIT, but I was very technologically challenged. I used to struggle to even make a presentation. But then as you start working, you realize that to survive and to get along in life, you have to understand what are the changes which are happening to you. You should, at least the basics that are required for you to function effectively, you have to keep learning.
A great session, and we can continue to speak on and on these topics, but I'm sure our audience will be in touch with you post this session. So I request Amit to take forward the session, please.
It is a wonderful session. Now I request CA Sumit Bihani to give vote of thanks.
I take on VIP on part of WIPCA, I take the opportunity to offer a formal vote of thanks, and I'm very thankful to both of the speakers, Rahul, Johri and Vineet ji. And Vineet ji being a CA, so he's very close to our heart, and I know Rahul ji personally, so again both of them are same. And few good takeaways I believe everyone should have good takeaways. So for me it was first is purpose, right? So we say ye nahi hai, wo nahi hai, but purpose is the most important. Purpose, passion, people. Probably the last thing is power of money. So whoever is lamenting that we don't have the power of money, please arrange all these threes in order, and probably the last P would follow. So I thank all of you, and I'll request Prakash Bhaiya to please take over from here. Just so sorry, I'm very, very sorry. This being my first time, I'm very sorry. So I request Rupesh to please come forward and offer a flower bouquet to Rahul ji. Sorry, memento. Again, sorry. हाँ स्टार्टअप है सर. ऐसे भी आज स्टार्टअप का डेफिनेशन चेंज हो गया. जब इन्होंने कहा इंडिया एक स्टार्टअप है, तो हम लोग कुछ भी कर सकते हैं. वील ग्रो स्लोली. And I'll request Shambhu Bhaiya to please come forward and offer a memento to Vineet ji. Thank you. Request Prakash Bhaiya to join us and take over the session. Thank you so much.